going on, everyone? Dan Julien here, nurse practitioner for Dan Aesthetics Medical. And today I'm happy to do an Instagram live with the one and only Dr. Jake Sloane from Inside Aesthetics. His podcast, in my opinion, it's one of the best podcasts in the world. We are going to talk shop and we're going to chat about what's going on in the world of medical aesthetics. Hey YouTube, before we jump into the video, make sure you check out my Patreon account. It's designed for serious medical aesthetics providers just like you.
It worked!
There it is! I'm great, thanks. It worked, man.
You know, there's nothing more terrifying than doing an Instagram live. You know, we've done nearly 200 podcasts, but when you try and log on to an Instagram live, you're never quite sure if it's going to work. So I think the Instagram gods are with us, mate.
All right, so how did we meet? I'm going to get you to answer this.
I guess like good, all good injectors, I actually knew about your work before we met, of course. You know, you do the whole Instagram thing where you're checking out other people's work, and your work was great. I loved what you're doing. Obviously, your YouTube's massive as well. So guys, if you don't follow Dan yet, you know, he's got an amazing YouTube channel. So lots of content about technique and, you know, anatomy and all that kind of stuff. So I knew you already, but obviously you're in Canada and we're here in Australia. And then I was actually contacted by a company here called On Vogue. And On Vogue are a promoter of one of the brands of filler that you happen to use in Canada. And they said, oh, hey, you know, Dan's coming to Australia to do a talk at the Fresh Clinics talk in Brisbane. You guys got a bit of synergy, you're quite similar. Why don't you maybe sort of reach out? And so I said, yeah, hell yeah. So we got you on the podcast to do an episode with us. It was awesome. And then obviously we got to catch up, we had dinner, and we've become brothers ever since.
Yeah, man, it was great. That podcast was amazing, actually. I was so nervous doing it. Tell me how that went about. Like your podcast, what was your vision? When do you think you started it? And
okay, so Inside Aesthetics, for the guys who've never heard of it, it's a podcast. It's kind of evolved a few times over the last couple of years. We started in, I think it's January 2019 was the first one. And honestly, it was very unstructured. I said to David, because we used to work in the same clinic. David's a clinic owner. He's not a doctor, but you know, he owns, or should I say, he owned multiple clinics. He's sold now. But at the time we were working together, he was a clinic owner. I was the injector. And one day I said to him, you know what? This whole social media thing, it's great, but you know, people have got very short attention span. They read a post, you've got about 30 seconds of their attention, then they're gone. And I was like, if we're ever going to educate properly or talk about anything sensible, we need something different. And David was a big podcast listener. I never really listened to many podcasts, but I sort of, we spoke about Joe Rogan and some of the things he was listening to. And I went away, and 5 minutes later I came back and said, hey, I'm going to do a podcast. And he was like, okay, cool. And then I went away, and then 5 minutes later I came back and I said, actually, do you want to be my co-host? Because I think it will have some synergy with, you know, you knowing the business and me knowing the injecting, it might kind of work. And he said, no, okay, fair enough. And so that was kind of how it was born. There was, you know, zero planning. We didn't know how to do the technical side of things. We had no microphones, no nothing. So we had to do a bit of research, and, you know, we started kind of pretty loosely. We had about 5 up our sleeve, and we utilized some of David's connections in Sydney. And a lot of the earlier ones were more about wellness as well as aesthetics, because you know, if you want to look good, you want to feel good. And if you want to feel good, you've got to look good. So we kind of went down that path for a good 80, 90 episodes, sort of mixing it up with both injectables as well as, you know, the wellness stuff. And then as time went on, we sort of got to understand our listeners better. And I was like, you know, most of our listeners are injectors. And whilst some of these topics are interesting, I don't think we're fully catering to what they want. And so we sort of tweak things, and as you know now, we're very much down in aesthetic, but also the aesthetic business perspective. And it's really resonated. It's grown hugely in the last year. And I think you said at the start, it's our 200th episode coming up, probably mid to late February. And it'll actually be our millionth listen probably in the next month. So we're kind of like, it's kind of gone, yeah, it's gone crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But little planning, the more we've gone, the more we've had to structure it and tailor it. So yeah, so that's Inside Aesthetics.
It's interesting how you said that with regards to kind of like 5 minutes later, I just made a decision. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. You want to join me? Yeah. And you went in and there was no plan. And I find that right now, that's how I did it with my social media as well. I just knew that if I was going to sit down, overanalyze what I was going to do, it would never happen, because I pick myself apart. The lighting wouldn't be perfect, whatever, is never going to happen. So I just told myself I'm going to post like 52 videos this year. No matter what, it's going to happen. And I just sit a camera in front, make it happen. Eventually, I just went all in with the aesthetics part, and that's exactly it. Now the next question for you is, I know that you have responsibilities, training responsibilities, you work with
Yeah.
partners. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
So I guess my main role that I'm known for is I'm a key opinion leader for Allergan Aesthetics. So obviously the Australian and New Zealand leg of that. Obviously the Allergan Medical Institute is sort of global, but I train mainly here in Australia. Been doing that since 2018. It's kind of an interesting role. It's very varied. I know you do that for Stylage and a couple of other companies, Dan. But, it can vary from one-on-one training to group training to, I don't know, giving a talk or doing a webinar. Particularly during COVID, it changed quite a lot, obviously, because, we couldn't see people. So there's a lot of webinars and online sort of training, which I don't know how you feel. I think it's got its benefits, but I truly believe in the hybrid model of, sometimes you just got to get your hands dirty and do something. And other times that's not appropriate. It's a waste of your time when you could just mass scale things and just talk to a lot of people through a computer. So yeah, so the role is all encompassing. It can be teaching, training, lecturing, fun, and so on.
It really depends, right? Everyone learns a little differently. Absolutely, you need to get your hands dirty, like in some form, whenever you're going into medical aesthetics, because you can't just teach someone if they've never done medical aesthetics before. You have to feel the layers. You have to know what it feels like. You have to know how hard to push on the bone. What is soft, what is too hard, what is, especially the cannula going, double, like feeling that extra pop. These are all things that you need to have hands on, especially a cadaver lab. Like you have to go to at least 1 or 2 cadaver labs.
Yeah.
And the first time you go, you just go. Be open, soak it all in. And then the next time after you take these courses, it's more or less, okay, what am I wanting to know? I had all these questions. Where is that tear trough ligament? Like, how deep am I? Am I actually like under the muscle, fat, whatever? And you go in and you look, and you got to get your hands dirty for that. But on the other hand, when it comes down to online learning, I'm a big online learner. I'm a big visual learner.
Having something like your Patreon is really important because you can just cross-refer, go back to it, watch a little 5-minute grab, look at your measurements and put those into practice. So conferences are useful, but they're very macro scale.
Tell me about your Patreon. So how did that start? What's your vision for it? What do you guys?
So it's not my Patreon, it's the Inside Aesthetics Patreon. We, again, set this up because the more podcasts we did, the more we realized that, you get feedback and people say, oh, that's a great podcast. That was really interesting. But it's very finite and it doesn't offer any interaction. It's just a podcast. And so we realized there's a bit of extra value that we could give. And I guess the easiest way, and the Patreon takes a couple of forms, but the main form is we've got 2 WhatsApp groups. We've got an injectable WhatsApp group and a business WhatsApp group. So there's probably about 100 people now. It's grown quite well over the last few months. And, people are just asking questions, getting support, talking about a case or a product or whatever it may be. And the problem with injectables is we're quite isolated as people. We're in our clinic, we're doing all this stuff, but we don't really get a chance to network unless you go to a big conference. So we're trying to create that sort of community vibe where, there's no judgment. You can be a master or a newbie. You can just ask a question. No one's going to laugh at you or take the piss. But then from the business perspective, David has also taken the lead on that. And we're supporting business. And that's actually resonated really hugely with people because, I don't have the answers to any of that, but David does. David's owned and grown and set up clinics for the last 15 years. He's truly seen it all. And he's a master of what he does. So helping people from the business perspective as well. I think there's a real lack of support there. So we've got our 2 WhatsApp groups. We've also started some lives. So we've got the IA business lives and the IA injectable lives. The first injectable one will be soon. I don't know when, but probably be in February, and I'll be leading that one. David's already done 2 business ones, and the third one is due next Monday.
The value is ridiculous. Like to me, that's a big thing. So whenever I went to speak in Australia, it was half of it was injection techniques, and the other one was learning how to market yourself. And that was the biggest part for me. I was really excited to talk about marketing because that is probably more important than anything. Like you could be the best injector in the world. You can have the best products in the world. You have the best clinics in the world. But if you can't market yourself, no one's coming. And in the end, you're absolutely right. We're not taught how to market ourselves, or we're not taught at all how to looking at the business side, and it scares us because we really don't know where to start. We don't know where the boundaries are. We don't know. You're literally winging it. For you guys to have that platform available at such a low price, it's crazy. I'm telling you, if you guys are out there and you're not on their Patreon, just for the business aspect alone for the WhatsApp group, I highly recommend it. You guys are going to learn a ton, and I'm going to take full advantage of asking a ton of questions because I plan on scaling my business, right? So right now we're in a position where we want to grow, and I don't know the first thing about it. I'm just doing my own research. It's kind of like a whole new realm here. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I think that is like the future for medical aesthetics, where people are really going to realize, sheesh, you're spending like $20,000 on courses, but you don't know how to get clients in. This is where you guys should probably start focusing on, because, look at McDonald's. They don't make the best burger in the world, but they own burger franchise, and they're doing
another
something
thing we
right,
want to do is cross-pollinate with people like you. There's no point in me saying what I know. We need to know what everyone knows. So then we get that sort of full breadth of knowledge and the whole spectrum of what's out there. I can only tell you my experience, but I want to learn from you and from Julie Horn and Tim Pierce and all these other people. So the more people we can get in this community, the more people who are free to share their knowledge and just be humble, I just think it helps our industry, because industry is still a bit of a joke. It's still young, it's still immature. We're not a specialty in most of our countries apart from Holland, as far as I know. We always struggle with regulation, not being taken seriously by other doctors or our medical professionals, and we need to do better. I'm serious about that. I think we need people like yourself and leaders to actually drag us up, because otherwise we're just gonna stay scrabbling around, sort of just doing our own thing, but without any sort of joined up thinking, I guess.
Okay, perfect. Well, honestly, it's been great. Thanks for
I really appreciate it. It's nice to see your happy, smiling face and know that you're well and the family's well.
Yeah, we're great, man. Thank you so much for doing this. We'll connect soon. I'm looking forward to chatting in
all good, brother,
in your WhatsApp group, and hopefully I get to see you.
Have a good one. Take care. Thanks, guys, for joining. See ya.
Take care. Cheers, everyone.